30s will be showing up in most of this region. Won't feel quite as cold as yesterday. The winds are not quite as strong. In the Rockies, 40s will be found today, and still plenty of sunshine there. Cloud cover and rain in the northwest. Now some forecasts.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
The Anglican Church prays for its envoy Terry Waite while the world waits for news on the new hostage negotiators' whereabouts. Hello, I'm Patrick Greenlaw. Hostage negotiator Terry Waite apparently knew the dangers he was facing on his latest trip to Lebanon. The missing envoy left instructions in London saying no ransom should be paid for him if he is taken captive. He also asked that there be no hostage exchanges or rescue attempts on his behalf. The Church of England says it still has no proof Waite is being held against his will, even though he hasn't been seen in almost 2 weeks. The London Sunday Express says a terrorist group is holding Waite and demanding $4 million for his safe return. The report could not be confirmed, though. There was also a report yesterday claiming Waite delivered a $2 million ransom last fall for the release of American hostage David Jacobson. The Archbishop of Canterbury says he doesn't think Waite was involved in any ransom deal.
Terry Waite has always made it quite clear that he has no dealings with such activities, and that's what he's said to me, and that's what I believe.
Money may also be involved in the recent kidnappings of 6 people in Beirut, including 3 Americans. A West German newspaper reports the kidnappers are demanding $50 million in ransom. The Islamic Jihad for the Liberation of Palestine also wants West Germany to refuse to extradite a hijacking suspect to the United States. The group also sent statements to 2 Beirut news outlets accompanied by photos of American hostages Jesse Turner and Alan Steen. The letters claimed the hostages would be killed unless Israel frees 400 Palestinian prisoners by next weekend. Israel has rejected that demand. At least 6 Israeli civilians were wounded today when a bomb exploded on a commuter bus. It was apparently planted by Arab guerrillas. The commuters were traveling from the northern city of Haifa to Jerusalem when the bomb exploded. Now, this latest attack on an Israeli bus was the worst since last February, when a bomb explosion on a bus in Tel Aviv killed 6 people. Israeli security specialists say living with terrorism takes more than luck. It takes a special kind of training. CNN's Jeff Levine reports some experts in combating surprise attacks are sharing their know-how for a price.
A scene at a baggage check-in counter turns from the mundane to the horrific as hijackers attempt to get through. But this clip from a security agency's promotional film shows Israeli guards foiling the crime. More than any other people, the Israelis must live with terror. And now they're making good use of that adversity by marketing some of the best and most expensive security services. Protection for someone facing a high risk could cost more than $100,000 for 6 months.
We developed the equipments, and we developed systems, and we trained the units and people. And we believe that we can give, let's say, a practical answer how to deal with the terrorism.
Israeli security people are much in demand these days. They have guns, will travel, and are among the world's most experienced in dealing with terrorists. It is the Israeli factor that security agent Benny Tal is hoping to exploit with ads in the International Herald Tribune.
People say that we are the best in Israel, so to be best in Israel, it's the best maybe in all the world. I'm tough with my people, I'm tough with the client, because in security you don't have the second chance.
Benny Tal's bodyguards, all ex-military men, go for $200 a day, and that doesn't include the client's risk assessment that could cost $10,000. Tal's customers are primarily European executives, but he's guarded actress Farrah Fawcett and South African Zulu leader Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Some of his men have been severely wounded in the line of duty, but Tal's never lost a client. Jeff Levine, CNN, near Tel Aviv.
Car bomb exploded in Kabul, Afghanistan today. Officials say at least 5 people died in the blast and about 20 others were injured. Witnesses say the explosion occurred in a mostly government district in the center of town. The exact target is unclear, but there are no immediate reports of foreigners among the casualties. Preparations are underway in the Philippines today for a big election that could virtually be a vote of confidence for President Corazon Aquino. Philippines go to the polls tonight, U.S. time, to cast their ballots for a new constitution. That document, if approved, assures Aquino's position through 1992. The military is on full alert to assure a peaceful election. A derailed freight train continues to burn at this hour in Corinth, Mississippi. Officials say it went off the tracks yesterday morning. It caught fire and ignited 2 cars, one carrying a toxic flammable chemical. Up to 1,000 people had to be evacuated, but there were no injuries. Fire officials say the train plunged down a 15-foot embankment and burst into flames. They say there's not much they can do to stop the fire.
In this area of the county, we don't have any fire hydrants and don't have any capability of, there's no roadway to go down there, so we can't get water transported down there enough to handle that size fire. And so we'll let it burn itself out. The railroad people will take over from there.
By the way, only about 15 people remain out of their homes right now. Child's play turned into tragedy yesterday in Philadelphia when a young boy was shot to death after throwing a snowball. Brian Glazier has details.
With tears in their eyes, neighborhood children are stunned by the shooting death of 16-year-old Peter McGettigan.
I was shot. I was just right before that.
McGettigan was gunned down on this spot while he and 5 other boys were involved in a snowball fight at the corner of Rising Sun and Ruscombe. That's across the street from this house, targeted earlier in the day by snowball throwers who busted one of the windows. Witnesses say the homeowner, Edward Smith, wielding a .357 Magnum, warned the boys to leave the area. They did not. Witnesses say Smith then fired 2 rounds from the front door of his stereo shop.
They were like throwing snowballs at his house and all, like, you know, just messing around. One hit his house and he's usually waving the gun around like all the time. He's like, oh, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to shoot you. The guy that lives there just got fed up, I guess. He loaded up that gun, he came out, he knew he was going to shoot somebody. It could have been all of us, any one of us. But he was just there and he was closest, so we decided to shoot him.
The guy screaming that his windows were broken earlier in the afternoon, but Peter was here. He never bothered to ask. He just started shooting.
McGettigan's sister and parents say their son was well behaved, an innocent victim. But other adults and police say Peter McGettigan was a rabble-rouser, that he and other teenagers terrorized local merchants and elderly residents. Police say they suspect neighborhood teenagers in at least a dozen burglaries, purse snatchings, and firebombings. So out of hand is juvenile delinquency in this area. A 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew has been in force here for nearly 6 months. Smith and his 3 mentally retarded daughters were constantly being harassed by local teenagers. One shopkeeper, who would not appear on camera in fear of violent retaliation, called this neighborhood a volcano waiting to erupt. The shooting was the eruption many predicted would eventually happen. Brian Glazier for CNN, Philadelphia.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
A fire rages through a Taiwan hotel earlier today where the residents were celebrating the Chinese New Year. At least 18 people are dead, 13 more have been injured. Hello, I'm Steve Schatz. More on that story in a moment, but first, the fate of hostage negotiator Terry Waite remains in question today, but the London Sunday Express is reporting terrorists allegedly holding him are demanding $4 million for his release. And another British newspaper, the Sunday Telegraph, says Waite handed a reporter a letter just moments before he left a Beirut hotel on the 20th of January. That is the last day Waite was seen in public. The newspaper says the letter instructs that no ransom or hostage exchange be made if, in fact, he is kidnapped. The Church of England is also denying reports that Waite delivered ransom money to terrorists for the release of American hostage David Jacobson.
Terry Waite has always made it quite clear that he has no dealings with such activities, and that's what he's said to me, and that's what I believe.
In the meantime, Waite's wife has gone into seclusion, and other relatives say they fear that he has in fact been taken hostage. And there is still a report of yet another hostage taking apparently in Beirut. Israeli radio says a reporter for the Wall Street Journal has been kidnapped, probably in Beirut. The Israeli radio quotes an Iranian broadcast as saying the reporter is an Israeli spy traveling with forged documents. Israeli radio says the Iran report did not say when or where that alleged abduction had taken place. And Israel has rejected demands to free 400 Palestinian prisoners made by a group claiming to have kidnapped 4 teachers in Beirut. A group calling itself the Islamic Jihad for the Liberation of Palestine made the demand in a statement sent to a Beirut newspaper. The group says the 400 prisoners should be sent in a Red Cross plane to Damascus. Along with the statement, the group sent a photograph of one of the hostages, American Jesse Turner. A Western news agency says it was also sent a statement of demands from the group along with a picture of another hostage, American Alan Steen. While all that's going on, a West German newspaper says more demands have been made for the release of hostages. The paper Bild says the hostages' captors want $50 million for the release of Steen, Turner, and 2 other hostages, American Robert Polhill and Indian Mittaleshwar Singh. Bild says if the group's demands are not met, the group says it will also release 2 kidnapped West German businessmen. The paper says the group is threatening to launch terrorist attacks in West Germany if their demands are not met. In the Philippines, voters will go to the polls tonight to vote on President Corazon Aquino's proposed constitution. CNN's Brian Jenkins has this update.
If the events of the past 10 days were designed to undermine public confidence in Corazon Aquino and erode support for the proposed constitution, the disruptions may have had the opposite effect. First, there was the protest for land reform that turned into a riot, and gunfire from the government side killed at least 15 people. Left-wing groups blamed the military's top brass, but officials said autopsies showed that at least 2 of the victims had powder burns on their hands, indicating they fired pistols themselves. 4 days after the riot, Mrs. Aquino met with leaders of the land reform movement and won their praise for her show of concern. The next day, nearly 500 renegade soldiers occupied a Manila television station and tried to take control of several military bases around the city. By the time the rebels gave up 3 days later, it appeared they had been part of a scheme to bring back deposed President Ferdinand Marcos. Communists have accused Armed Forces Chief of Staff Fidel Ramos and the CIA of being behind the TV station takeover, and there are rumblings from the right of more rebellion, but voters in the middle appear to be pleased with the president's new tough line on dealing with anyone involved in a coup attempt. Finally, Mrs. Aquino has won back some support from the right for refusing to talk with communists about a role in running the country. So the perception is that the president has emerged from this latest round of crises with broader backing, and she'll need it to win a clear vote of confidence with at least 70% approval of the new Constitution. Brian Jenkins, CNN, Manila.
And Chinese New Year celebrations have ended on a tragic note in Taiwan. Fire swept through a southern port city hotel this morning, killing at least 18 people and injuring 13 more. Investigators are looking into the possibility of safety violations at that hotel. They say emergency exits were blocked by mattresses and hotel supplies. Those who managed to escape with only injuries were rushed to a nearby hospital to be treated for fractures and smoke inhalation. Some 20 hotel guests saved themselves by leaping into safety nets from 3rd and 4th floor windows. In Afghanistan, a powerful car bomb has killed at least 4 people today and injured several others outside the Indian embassy in Kabul. Kabul radio reports officials in Afghanistan believe the attack was carried out by common enemies of India and Afghanistan who want to undermine the good relationship the 2 countries share. The embassy and several other government buildings were damaged in the explosion, but the target of the attack is unclear at this time. A fiery train derailment in Corinth, Mississippi yesterday forced the evacuation of some 1,000 people. The Norfolk Southern freight cars jumped the tracks yesterday morning and plunged down a 15-foot embankment. 2 cars caught fire, including a tanker carrying a toxic flammable chemical posing a danger to nearby residents. An evacuation order remains in effect today while the tanker continues to burn. Police say they hope to have it extinguished soon. Police divers have recovered the body of a 10-year-old boy from a freezing Chicago river. His sister also drowned there on Friday after heroic efforts to rescue her brother. Just before her death, she was able to rescue her other brother, who'd also fallen into that river. Robert Jordan has the story.
Chicago Police Department scuba divers were back at the scene. With temperatures rising, the murky north branch of the Chicago River was only partially covered by ice, and there were other problems. A churning current caused by water pouring over a small dam made rescue efforts more difficult. Still, divers continued to search for the body of 10-year-old Mohammed Yaqub. After searching underwater for less than 30 minutes, one of the divers signaled that he had found the child.
Bring a blanket! Sarge, give me a blanket.
The frozen, lifeless body of the boy dashed all hopes that the tragedy might have a more positive ending. At their home, a block away from the scene, the Yaqub family waited for word that their oldest son had been found. 8-year-old Jonathan was surrounded by friends who came to give him support. They knew he too had fallen into the icy river and was lucky to be alive.
He was the second one trying to help his brother. He fell in the water. His sister saved him, pulled him up. She wanted to bring his gloves for him. That's when she fell in the water. She gave her life so she can keep him warm.
5-year-old Victoria's body was pulled from the water. Our department paramedics thought they heard a faint heartbeat.
You never lose hope. You never lose hope, even in the last second. You know that that person is dead, but you still think there is a little bit hope.
Doctors were never able to revive her. Divers say tragedies like this one can be avoided if people just stay off the ice.
I wouldn't recommend going out on ice. If you want to ice skate, go to one of the Park District facilities where they flood the ground. It's just not worth the chance. And obviously, this is an unfortunate state instance where some kids who happen to live near a river or body of water and just not realizing what they were doing, went out and had a tragic accident.
Civil rights leaders are back in Forsyth County, Georgia today, this time going to church. Civil rights leader Hosea Williams led a group of about 100 people to worship in the all-white county. Blacks were driven out of the county 75 years ago. For the past 2 weekends, demonstrators have marched on the county to protest racism. Williams says they will march again unless county leaders respond by tomorrow to demands he gave them. The list handed to them yesterday included the creation of a biracial committee to look into the county's alleged employment and housing discrimination.
I'm tired. I'm 61 years old. I spent the last 30 years of my life, and the change has just not come. How long do we have to protest? How long, America, do we have to protest? We spent the last 30 years. I am tired of protesting, but I have no choice.
The County Chamber of Commerce president said tomorrow's deadline will be impossible to meet. And about 1,000 people converged on the county courthouse in Louisville, Kentucky to protest the Ku Klux Klan's burning of a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. Last week, 5 Klansmen set a picture of the slain civil rights activist on fire to protest the national holiday in his honor. Politicians, clergymen, and businessmen addressing the huge crowd denounced the act.
They are not smart enough to know if they burn his picture, they still will not burn his dream. Come on! That we will not stand for religious intolerance, that Louisville will not be a home for sexual discrimination, and that Louisville will not be a haven for racial bigotry.
10 Klansmen held their own demonstration at a county office building just a few miles away from the demonstration we just saw. And just ahead on Newsday, Steve Kosch and Fred Hickman join us with your latest weekend weather and sports, and we'll have the story of some devastating floods in the Soviet Union. Stay with us.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
The demands of terrorists sent in a letter to a news agency in Beirut are rejected by Israel. Welcome to Newswatch Saturday. I'm David French in Washington.
And in Atlanta, I'm Rick Moore. An American journalist is being detained by the Iranian government without any official explanation. The State Department is calling for the immediate release of Gerald Saib. He's the Middle East bureau chief of the Wall Street Journal, based in Cairo, Egypt. Hours after Saib's detention last night, Iran's official government news agency reported a, quote, spy of the Zionist regime had been arrested. The report said the man traveled on a phony passport and posed as a journalist. Neither a name nor nationality accompanied that report. A spokesman for the Wall Street Journal in New York
says Gerald Saib entered Iran on a valid and legal U.S. passport. Saib was one of more than 50 American and foreign journalists invited to Iran by the Tehran government. The selected journalists were given an Iranian tour of the battlefront of the Persian Gulf War. All other American journalists departed safely from Iran. The State Department has thanked the Swiss government for attending to the Saib case. The Swiss represent American interest in Iran in the absence of U.S.-Iran diplomatic relations. Leaders in the Middle East are said to be burning up the telephone lines in an effort to find out what has happened to hostage negotiator Terry Waite. A senior militia official in Lebanon says the leaders involved are from his country as well as Syria and Iran. Waite has been missing now for 12 days. CNN's John Dunban has more on the situation from Cyprus. He also reports on the arrival of more Americans from Lebanon following orders from Washington to get out.
One of the few ferries left running between Beirut and Cyprus arrived here with 5 Americans on board, all of them Lebanese-born, some of them ending what were only brief visits to Lebanon. Like all Americans, they are now barred by order of the U.S. from going back into that country. This New Yorker said it is time that U.S. citizens got out.
Is that the country is in disarray. There are too many militias on the road. There are absolutely no security. There's no government. There is absolutely nothing secure on that in that country. And
this man, in fact, was kidnapped last year on his way to Beirut airport, but released after 4 hours. What if that had happened now?
I think if they catch me this year with an American passport, I don't think I'll be here talking to you gentlemen.
There's no other way but boat to reach Cyprus from Beirut unless you want to drive to Syria. Lebanon's national airline offers no way out. All of its aircraft were evacuated here to Cyprus on Saturday night when Beirut airport was expected to come under shelling. They remain parked by daytime on the Larnaca runway. A death threat still stands on 4 university teachers kidnapped last weekend, 3 U.S. citizens among them. A note delivered to a Beirut news office says the men will be killed unless Israel releases 400 Palestinian prisoners within a week. The group threatened to, quote, throw their bodies on the garbage cans of Cyprus. Why Cyprus is not explained. In any case, the Israeli government says no deal. There's no encouraging, reliable information about Anglican envoy Terry Waite, who has now been missing nearly 2 weeks after leaving his bodyguards to meet with some Beirut kidnappers. Waite's boss, the Archbishop of Canterbury, said he had a letter from Waite before he disappeared, insisting that if he was kidnapped, he wanted no ransom paid and no rescue mission attempted. Here in Cyprus, there has been no unusual activity reported lately at the large British airbase at Akrotiri, a place where cameras are not welcome. If either the U.S. or Britain wanted to launch some sort of attack or rescue mission into Lebanon, it could well start from here. At least that's what many Cypriots feared, and as soon as reports began that U.S. ships were heading in this direction, the government of Cyprus made known its opposition to any military activity, even if it does sympathize with America's dilemma. John Donovan, CNN, Larnaca, Cyprus.
There are reports that ransom demands have been made for Waite and some of the other foreigners missing in Lebanon. The London Sunday Express says terrorists are asking for $4 million in exchange for Waite. And the West German newspaper Bild reports that $50 million is being demanded for the release of 3 Americans, an Indian, and 2 West Germans who were recently abducted. It says the demand has been made through intermediaries to the West German government. Bild says the terrorists are also demanding that a hijacked suspect arrested in Frankfurt not be extradited to the United States.
Congress and the White House may find themselves in another battle over executive privilege, this time because of President Reagan's personal memoirs. The Washington Post says Mr. Reagan's notes include material on the Iran-Contra affair, and the paper says the Senate Select Committee investigating the affair is expected to try to get a hold of those notes. CNN's Francis Harden has more.
The White House says Mr. Reagan writes his notes in the evening in the residence. The recollections, which concern both private and official matters, are intended for his memoirs. A spokesman says he can't be specific about exactly what Mr. Reagan writes, but he adds one has to assume the Iran-Contra affair would be included. The spokesman cautions that the president's notes are neither a detailed chronology nor a transcript of White House events. The Washington Post reports that White House Chief of Staff Donald Regan was asked about the notes in a closed session with the Senate Intelligence Committee. Regan reportedly bristled at the suggestion that the notes might be useful to the panel's investigation of the Iran-Contra affair. Senator William Cohn, a member of the panel investigating the Iran-Contra affair, reported he will ask to see the president's notes. But the White House says releasing the notes would infringe on the privacy of the president and others. A refusal could set the stage for a constitutional battle over executive privilege, but a former White House spokesman thinks the president would cooperate.
The president's desire from the start on this has been to get everything out and make available in an unprecedented manner all of the papers that we can find out in the White House. All of the cabinet people have gone without any restrictions placed on them. And whether or not this would be a case for executive privilege, I think the president's desire would be to turn it over to the Congress. But
a spokesman for the Senate Select Committee says it will be up to Chairman Daniel Inouye to decide whether to ask the president for his notes. The White House appears ready to dig in. A spokesman for Mr. Reagan says the president has full confidence that the investigation will clear up everything and that all significant questions will be answered. As a result, Mr. Reagan does not believe that release of his private papers is warranted. Frances Harden, CNN, the White House.
All of official Washington will have to answer a lot of lingering questions in the week ahead. What to do about the demands of the terrorists? Does Congress want a clean water bill badly enough to override President Reagan's veto? And does Congress want a pay raise badly enough to take the political heat? CNN's Bob Franken takes a look at the week's busy schedule.
Washington will once again focus on developments in the Mideast. The administration faces another turning point in the Beirut hostage situation, with the ultimatum that 3 Americans will be killed at week's end if captors' demands aren't met for the release of 400 Palestinians from Israeli jails. Amid charges that the Iran arms sales might have encouraged more kidnappings, Attorney General Edwin Meese faces 2 days of grilling by 2 different Senate committees, Foreign Relations and Judiciary. But in all probability, the administration's worst battering will occur when Congress almost certainly will vote to override the president's veto of the Clean Water Act.
We're looking forward to the next decade, and we're trying to deal with the next decade. The best example of that is the Clean Water Bill.
In the Senate, the $90 billion highway bill comes up for consideration. It has already been passed by the House. And in the House, there will be a vote on pay raises for federal executives and members of Congress. Members give the raises almost no chance of passage. The one issue that continues to dominate is the Iran arms Contra affair, and speculation that the presidency of Ronald Reagan has run out of steam.
I would remind you that throughout his political life, people have made serious mistakes by underestimating this president.
President Reagan turned 76 on Friday, and with all the controversy about his ability to lead, it's possible that number 76 might not be his happiest of birthdays. Bob Franken, CNN, Washington.